Good evening and welcome to tonight's first budget work session. Just for public consumption, we also have 2 more budget workshops at minimum. Tonight you'll hear from me relative to the work our district planning team has done as it relates to the budget guidelines. That will be first. I'm going to pause at that point. I'm going to ask for any discussion regarding the budget guidelines and just a quick thumbs up if you're good with having the guidelines moving forward. If there's areas in the guidelines that you want me to go back to the district planning team, we are meeting this Thursday, so the timing is perfect for that. We will then also cover tonight our revenues as well as our human resource report. So with that said, there we go. How about that? As far as our budget guidelines, we felt strongly that we maintained our tradition of being student-focused. One of the things that we certainly moved around in the guidelines and added some emphasis to was the need for a safe and secure school environment and facilities. You'll see that in multiple ways throughout the budget. You'll see that in our capital project. You'll see our need for secure vestibules at the fronts of every school. You'll see the need for double secure vestibules at the Barker Road East side. You'll see our need for emergency generators and intruder locks and locking mechanisms for all of our large group areas that have the push bars. Those are 3 significant buckets. We're also going to be proposing at some point additional security guards at minimum at the high school, which would also fall under this bucket. It's critical in today's world that our focus is on safety and security, and I can't share that enough. We need to make sure our entrances are secure, and we need to make sure we have the mechanisms to both prevent and to react in the event of a worst case scenario. When we transition from that to why we're in school, once our students are here, we find it very important that all of us within our district are creating a engaging, relevant, rigorous curriculum, and that transcends to everything from assessments that our students take to the different offerings that we have for our young adults. We also believe strongly that one of our strengths as a community are the wide array of choices we give students within school and beyond school. Every child is different. Every child needs to find their own niche in our world. And so the amount of offerings that we have for our student is critical. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that whole concept of the whole child and giving students the ability to find a connection. As you're aware, we have increased our technology initiative of our one-to-ones for every student. Certainly, and this was forecasted, when you bring that many more devices on board, we're also going to need some additional support. So you'll also see a request for an additional technician type person to assist with the multiple devices that we have. And certainly, the last 3 have been the world that we've lived in. Thankfully, with an emphasis the last several years, with our importance on inclusive practices, equity across our district, which you'll also see in a different lens within our capital project. Our SEL and mental health supports have grown exponentially the last couple of years thanks to the federal funds. We'd like to continue moving forward with those. And then recognizing when we have 6,000 students that come across all of our buildings, that none have the same needs. We have the job of meeting all 6,000 students' needs in different ways. And so I'm asking for us to consider that within the budget guidelines. In order for an organization to thrive and to make sure that we are all on the same page and working in the same direction, high quality professional development is essential. We know that within the classroom, the biggest people that make a difference in the lives of children are the teachers. And teachers have in front of them anywhere between 16 and 25 students in a classroom, all with different needs. We need to make sure that we're providing professional development to assist our teachers in a way where they can meet the needs of our varied levels of students and needs. Curriculum assessment, grading, and instructional practices are always evolving. They are never staying stagnant. We are always looking at best practices. We're looking at things currently right now relative to a philosophy specific to grading, and how do we allow for grading to continue a student to be motivated, especially when they're not doing well. And we also want to make sure that grades reflect learning. So we have a lot of work to do in that area. Certainly we want to continue with our inclusive practices that are aligned with our goals that are on our website relative to inclusion. Our PLCs, this is the time that we allow for staff to talk about their craft, to talk about their initiatives that they're working on within their department or within their building, and how we can best align curriculum within those areas and best resources so that regardless of where a student goes or what teacher the child has, they're going to still have that same high level quality of instruction. Safety preparedness, obviously, and the training that goes along with that. And then recognizing that schools are much more than teachers alone. We're also filled with bus drivers and cafeteria workers and paraprofessionals and secretaries and different directors, and all of them have a critical role in being part of making sure our students are doing well. We feel that it's important when we think about where we are right now, and you'll hear this a little bit more from Mike, our CPI is 8.1. It's through the roof. Inflation's through the roof. Costs for borrowing are through the roof. People aren't making as much in their 401ks or their 403bs or any other investments. So more than ever, we need to be sensitive to all of those scenarios, knowing that it's certainly projected at least through the next fiscal year. So thinking about that, we need to make sure that we're delivering a high quality of education by being sensitive to what we're asking our community to support. So you're going to hear a little bit later that what we're asking for our community to support is close to a 0% tax cap. And we're able to do that this year, which is amazing timing, primarily because of state aid and all the advocacy we've been doing to get to a fuller amount of making us whole or partially whole as it relates to what the formula says we should get. So we're able to, my hope is to provide the same high quality of education that we're used to and accustomed to, and doing so with a minimum, if any, tax cap increase. Thinking about the future and the uncertainty, we're going to need a significant amount of time invested, and I have to thank Mr. Vespi for this, relative to long-term financial planning. Working collaboratively with our local partners, which we've always done, to share services, but thinking maybe a little bit differently about how that could look, especially as it relates to different area districts around us and perhaps how we can do things a little bit differently. We have the cessation of federal funds that we're going to have to contend with. Some of the federal funds are up this year, which means we've hired positions to come in for 2 years. That is going to expire. We've hired some positions to come in under different federal funds that expire in 3 years. Those are all part of the equation as we look to build a budget that keeps us under a 0.5 tax cap. We also are contending with compression, specifically meaning minimum wage has gone up to the point where it has surpassed some of the amounts that we pay our employees. So thinking about the impact of compression on our food service workers, some of our maintenance and custodians, our bus drivers, and how we deal with that will certainly have a budgetary outcome. Continuing to seek innovative sources of revenue. So I think about the work that our Pittsford Education Foundation has done, how we've recently acquired a $100,000 grant that's primarily used for our students that are in our urban suburban program, but also with our student opportunity funds. But even thinking beyond that, as we look even towards our next capital project, even though we're in the infancy of this, who can we tap into to begin to possibly donate money to offset any kind of levy? Recruiting, hiring, and retaining diverse employees of the highest caliber will continue to be a goal, and seeking cost efficiencies relative to unfunded and underfunded mandates. And I'll share with you, we had a very long conversation at our legislative breakfast about this, and I know that our local assembly member is very interested, and I believe she has or is about to create a bill to study the unfunded mandates, and that's Assembly Member Lunsford. Stability now and into the future is where we need to be. We need to make sure that whatever we do today doesn't put us behind for tomorrow. So thinking about our reserve accounts, thinking how the reserve accounts we have right now are allowing us to connect with that first bullet around student-based relative to security and safety. We are able to expend $15 million or $14 million of capital reserve funds to offset the cost of this project to make sure our buildings are safe and secure. Continuing our partnerships and shared services and paying attention to our audits. So our work with BOCES is significant. Our COSERs, the funds that were reimbursed to a large extent. We are able to have larger projects because of our bond rating. Our credit is second to none. We're at the highest level of credit that one can have. So we need to make sure that what we do sets us up in the future for maintaining that credit. And continuing with facilities and infrastructure, which is a big part of why we're doing this capital project, along with that advocacy with legislators relative to appropriate levels of funding, which is ongoing as early as last Saturday. And of course, we have legal mandates and contractual obligations that we're going to have to move forward as we look at this budget. So with that, I have to thank, this is our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mike Vespi. He's done a phenomenal job stepping into his position, learning as much as he can about our organization, and he's almost been like an external auditor and being able to say, here are the things I would do differently. And part of that is that within our budget guidelines, that long-term forecasting, long-term finance or planning. And he's been working hand in arm with the business office to create what I think is an extraordinary budget. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I think it's outstanding to start our budget workshop with the budget guidelines. It really, I think, grounds what we do. And I always say the best budget presentations are those about programs and services and pictures of kids. So it really feels, to be an excellent start in terms of grounding to what this budget really is all about. And it's those guidelines that set the foundation for the finances. So just in terms of the timeline, we show this a couple of different ways, but the budget never ends. The process, really is continuous. And so in June 30th, when we close the books, we really look into the future in terms of long-range financial planning, and we wait for the next step of the process, which is the release of the executive budget proposal. It was a couple of weeks late this year because it was an election year by law. It can be a couple of weeks late. So we have that information, so we're able to talk about the revenue projections at this time. March 1st, we'll submit the tax cap projection. We're in a unique situation with the capital project vote, so as Mr. Pirro alluded to, we'll show a couple of different scenarios in terms of what that looks like. And it's just an early submission, and it can certainly be amended. And then, we'll be heavy budget in March with the requirements, and then the budget approval in April. And, of course, always the third Tuesday in May with the vote. So just, I won't spend a lot of time, but just two major sources in school districts. And obviously, our district, the majority of the revenue comes from the tax levy, right? So roughly 72%. The remainder really comes from state aid. And then there's other sources. And actually, you'll hear later that we continue to do really well in interest earnings, which has been, non-existent for the last 4 years. And then county sales tax is actually doing really well as well. So we're fortunate when we do get to the tax cap discussion to have some of these offsetting revenue sources to really help us as we look into the future. So again, I mentioned tax levy 72%, and this is where the tax cap legislation really is a catch-22, right? It's good from the concept that you want to limit taxes and support our stakeholders in the community. On the flip side, if you're dependent upon that revenue, you really have to, be very careful in terms of future forecasting to be able to afford the programs and services that you have. So I'm not going to get into the details in terms of property tax cap. I left this. This has been part of the district's presentation. I left it in because I do think it's good from a reference standpoint to look at this very simple 2% tax cap, which we know is far from 2%. It's dependent on other factors. The only thing that's 2% is the allowable tax, or the allowable growth factor. So I mentioned this, and I've alluded to this in the past, that I'll get into the weeds a little bit in the presentation in terms of, how everything's calculated. So remember, all these are subject to change. It depends on the final numbers. But the first thing I'll highlight is the tax-based growth factor, and that's a reflection of really new growth in the area. And I had forecasted that to be about 1.0056. It came in at 1.0051. That factors, that second factor down, comes from the Office of Real Property Tax Services. The next thing we do, we make an adjustment with prior year pilots and prior year exemptions, and then you can see the allowable levy growth factor is the lesser of CPI, or 2%. And again, we're capped at 2%. I'll show a slide where, the actual CPIU is 8%. And that's not keeping up, for us. And there's an overlay that I'll share with you. So then what we do is we subtract the pilots for the coming year. Again, the concept is a payment in lieu of tax situation. You do not need to put that on the tax levy, so you subtract it off. So it's a separate collection of tax. It's a side deal. And we've got 3 of those that are in existence, very minor. They're office park properties that have been in existence, and they'll increase slightly on an annual basis for the next couple of years, and then they'll trail off. So I've got a 5-year forecast that shows that, because as pilots come off, it impacts the percentage on the tax cap. The biggest aspect that we've faced, and that I have kind of audited since I've been here, is the fact that we had a tremendous amount of debt service falling off based on the 2002 project and that repayment schedule. So that really is the largest factor to impact this calculation on that capital levy exclusion. So you can see a tremendous difference, 5568 to 2944. Right, highlighted in yellow. That results, last year it was 2.53, and it raised $2.7 million, right? This year, that nets a 0.08 based on the financing if the project is approved, right? The early financing if the project's approved. And that would net $83,000. So in terms of this revenue forecast, this is as good as it's going to get in terms of that schedule. Here's what it would look like without, right? So everything that I mentioned on the first slide stays the same. And we get to the second slide, and you see that the calculation for the exclusion goes negative. When it goes negative, it defaults to 0, and that's where the comparison from one year over the other goes negative. So this is what we try to do from a long-range financial planning situation. We always try to plan capital improvement projects so that we can layer on the debt to avoid this particular situation. So that's why it is important, that March 28th is important in terms of, what happens with our revenue forecast at the end of the day. Now, I say that, and I want to be careful how I say that, because we would have to trim the $2.8 million, right, compared to a positive, 86, but we would also have less of a temporary financing for the project. So it's not as dire as it would appear from that standpoint. It's just not positive from the standpoint, if you look at the time value of money and you look at a percentage of your largest revenue source, 72%, there's a diminishment of future percentages as it pertains to this cap. So it's a mathematical limitation more than anything, but it does have a negative impact. And it would restrict future revenues, depending on the scenario, as much as, up to $500,000 over the next 5 years. So this is really important. And again, I typically wouldn't get this far in the weeds, but I think it's important to see the two scenarios, and have that information out there. We talked about the transparency associated with this revenue forecast. I also, on the tax cap that I can share, I have an updated 5-year forecast. So everything I do in terms of revenue and expenditures, I take a look at how the decisions we're going to make in this year's budget impact the future. So I certainly can share what I see the tax cap being. This is a historic look back at allowable growth factors, the so-called 2%, and then what the CPI was. And you can see the last 2 years, it's just not keeping up. And I found this right on the Office of State Comptroller website, which graphically really tells the picture. You can see that the allowable levy growth factor, right, has kept up, maybe the exception the first year, right, and a little bit in 2019. It really hasn't negatively impacted school districts because inflation has been in check, right? And so remember, if, when it was 0.12, the allowable factor was 0.12. But we couldn't complain because that's where inflation was. Now we've got a situation where, and we always, the financial aspects of the state always warned in this formula, if something happens with inflation, there's got to be an adjustment that's made. So it is something that we talked about legislatively to say there's got to be some kind of circuit breaker, some kind of allowance that's made, because there's a natural erosion of supplies and materials within the budget as it exists, and we don't have an offsetting revenue. Now, with the restoration of foundation aid, tough argument. As we go forward, and we're not sure what's going to happen in terms of the revenue outlook from the state, might have a stronger argument if CPI continues. I've looked at several economic models that suggest CPI is going to come back down within the next 12 to 18 months into that 3.2% range. So we'll continue to monitor that. And we are seeing positive growth, or positive, I wouldn't say growth, but I would say positive reduction in these factors. So just some notes, right? This is a good summary. CPI continues to impact us. The capital exclusion obviously has a huge impact on the calculation this year. While it's positive that we paid $5.1 million back in debt, it's paid in full. We don't have the corresponding reduction in building aid because we've done cash projects, which results in a negative exclusion. So it's more mathematically, it would seem more intuitive that when you pay down debt that you get rewarded, as opposed to having the exclusion work the opposite way. BOCES capital project funding also returned to normal levels. It has been elevated for the past 3 years. BOCES has done a tremendous job. I've had a chance to go and tour the facilities, and they've really done a tremendous job in terms of capital project work there. Transportation aid for school buses also reduces in the formula. We pay cash for buses, we don't finance, so we're getting aid and we don't have the expense. Again, it would seem that you're rewarded for that because you don't have the borrowing costs, et cetera. All right, and we'll submit this March 1st, but certainly we have the ability to modify it. Just to look at the tax levy history, this comes from the forecasting software that I use for the district now. And you see it starts to level off in 22, 23, 24. Foundation aid. We're very, very happy about foundation aid. Right? We've waited a long time. We've waited over 10 years to be fully funded for foundation aid. We've waited our turn. We've endured the gap elimination adjustments, the deficit reduction assessment, and we finally have the aid coming in. And it's coming in all at once over the last 2 years. But out of respect to my colleague and all of the tracking that's been done, it still results in over $100 million in the arrears in terms of revenue to the district. So this district has done a great job maintaining programs and services while not being fully funded from foundation aid, and we'll continue to find creative ways to do that even if we face future challenges. Just some highlights here. We're waiting to hear what the high impact tutoring aid is. It's over $600,000 for the district. It's a set aside at the bottom. Usually when the state puts these types of figures out from a particular initiative, they'll put it out. We'll see if it makes it through the legislative aspect of the budget, and then the guidelines follow, and then we play catch up. So certainly I think from an academic standpoint, this would be money that would be well worth it. To continue tutoring and any mitigations from COVID-related fallout. Expanded mental health services for school-age children. We've heard that in our legislative breakfast and on our webinar. So I'm curious to see, what's going to happen there. One of the things that's, scratch cooking and discretionary spending for New York produced foods. One of the things that's not on here that we're keeping a close eye on is whether or not New York is going to fully fund school lunch. So that's something we'll continue to monitor as well. While that's a separate aspect of the budget, not in our general fund budget, it's still an important aspect that would have, would definitely have an impact on us. So just a reflection overall in terms of the proposal, this is really a best case scenario, right? For many, many years, the executive proposal was just, we'll throw it out there. It's, we're going to consolidate aid categories, maybe mess around with BOCES aid a little bit, and then the legislators get together and, negotiate. This is the second year in a row where we look at a very generous proposal from the governor, and it's probably going to be the best case scenario with some tweaks. And the reason why I say that is last year there was a little bit of downward adjustment on foundation aid once it got trued up. So,
so Mike, just to clarify, in the event there is a bill that comes to fruition relative to fully funding meals for New York State schools, we would then bring to the board the consideration for going back to being on the New York State program versus staying on our own program.
It's funny, we actually had a meeting yesterday with the cook managers from every school, and they asked that question in terms of process. Certainly, it would be a process to make that change back. We'd have to look at staffing and requirements and regulated, going back to having regulated menu selections and recipes. And so, their concern was, well, we couldn't do that all at once. And really, if that happens, it really would be a process. We'd have to put together an appropriate timeline. We'd have to put together appropriate staffing. And then we would have to do a lot of retraining based on not being part of that lunch program, for a few years now. So, yeah, so thoughtful consideration would have to be given in all those areas. So I always laugh about what you read in the paper about foundation aid and percentages, and then we dig into them, right? We don't have universal pre-K here, so you see there's a large increase that's shown there. Transportation aid, the estimate that's on here, is nothing more than that. It's an estimate. Actual aid will be reflective of what we actually spend as of June 30th this year, and we've been using federal funds to offset some of the increases in transportation. BOCES aid is also an estimate of what comes, really over the next 2 fiscal years based on what you spend. Everything else looks good. High excess cost is probably a little high. Everything else looks good. So if we subtract universal pre-K, we're more at about 20%, and then you see that 632 for the set-aside for high-impact tutoring. So this 25% is really an overstatement that you would read about, right? It's really more 20%, and then within that 20%, when we boil it down based on some of what I just outlined in the areas, including we have to true up foundation aid based on current law. We don't want to use the largest estimate and then have to track it back. We're looking at about 12.34%, right? So that's probably more in line, more realistic from an estimate standpoint. Again, very, very, very positive situation. And if this is the year to have it based on our tax cap factor, then we're in really good shape in terms of that. This just gives you a historic look at foundation aid and total state aid. This comes from our state aid planning. So you can see about half of it comes from foundation aid out of total state aid, and the remainder are those expenditure-driven aids. Little choppy, right? We see what happened in 21, so a little choppy look of state aid, and then the last 2 years of that full funding, and pretty slow and steady from 2014 on up to this point in terms of full funding. So this will be something that from a future standpoint, if the expectation is 3%, I've already got a forecast model out of what that looks like, but we just don't know. And that's the biggest unknown that we have right now is all we've talked about since 2007, and really before that, it started really probably in 2003, 4, is foundation aid in this formula. So now once it gets fully funded, what do we do next? And so that really is going to be the question overall. So again, positive news. With an approved project, we see total new revenue at $3.1 million. It's going to be a little bit higher because we always are conservative on actual budget estimates of state aid. Interest earnings, you're going to see a projection tonight in the Treasurer's report over $1.1 million. Now, can we count on it? We hope so, right? There was another increase. And then, of course, those sales tax increases as well. So a lot of positive aspects there. Without an approved project, it drops to $316,000. But remember, the impact of the reduced band financing would offset that. So it's not as dire as it would first appear, but it certainly would have an impact. So next steps really it's really all about, I think we've got a good idea on the revenue side. It's really about finishing up the expense side, staffing projections with Mr. Clark. We've got to make adjustments for COVID funds. I actually had a chance to reconcile where we stand there, and we're in really good shape in terms of the 3 different grants. We'll continue to look at a state aid analysis in terms of the set aside, and then we'll work with the district planning team overall. I think the biggest thing that I think was mentioned previously is every decision that we make now has to be well thought out, because we don't know what's going to happen with foundation aid, and we don't know what's going to happen with inflationary factors. So we really have to, I think, be a little bit, even though we've got a nice increase in revenue, we've got to be conservative because we're not sure what's going to happen 2 and 3 years down the road. So really well poised for a budget this year, but still an eye to the future in terms of being conservative. And then our upcoming meetings, which I think is important overall, we'll continue to have our workshop sessions well planned out, and I think we'll be in very good shape when it comes to mid-March. So at this time, I'd turn it over to Mr. Pirro, and then Sean's going to come up.
So if we could maybe break this into 2 different areas, the first being the budget guidelines. Are there any concerns, comments, questions, anything that board members feel I need to take back to the district planning team relative to our guidelines? I'm going to have to split the two of you up in the back. I'm sorry. Liz and Barb, if you can just split apart. Now you're both on camera, too. So if we could just get a thumbs up if they're good as is. Then I want to just thank our district planning team. And one of the things I did not mention is our district planning team has representation from our every stakeholder unit group within Pittsford Central School District. So that's everyone. So that means it's the paraprofessionals, the teachers, the secretaries, the administrators, and so on and so forth, as well as our PTSA, as well as a community member without students in the district anymore. So it's a vast array of stakeholders there. And they put in several hours into these guidelines, and they've gone through several renditions. So I'm happy that to share with them that we're all good. Right? Thank you. Any questions for Mike and the revenue picture for moving forward?
That's what the current projection really is. It continues to grow. Yeah. So I don't know that we can count on that into the future, but when you look at our current budget and you look at what we can budget, it's that's why I've got a conservative range of 500 to 750, but that might even be below if we keep up at this rate. So there's a whole generation of treasurers and school business officials that are out there that don't remember what it's like to actually be able to invest this cash flow and get a positive return. So it's eye-opening for municipalities.
Hey, Mike, what is the amount of federal aid coming off this year? Do we know the actual?
The total amount of federal aid? Yeah. It's so we have two grants. It's the SRSA, and there's two parts. There's ESSER and GEAR. And one was a little bit over 4.4 million. The other one was smaller, about 750,000. We've had a plan in place to spend those funds over the last 2 years. And in fact, I just gave an update. Remember, this is accounted for separately, right? So we did have some additional positions for mental health services and for some cybersecurity initiatives that were in those grants, and we're in the process of evaluating how to transition those positions into the general fund. We do have one more year of the ARP grant, and that's a little over $1.2 million, and the balance there is probably about 370,000 right now, and we've got some staffing that are located in those grants as well. So really a huge infusion into the district. And you remember that one year that you saw where the revenue went negative in terms of the reduction in transportation aid and some of the holdback in aids, and there was a drop off in building aid as well. So these federal grant funds were meant to keep districts going, and they were designated for a particular reason. Learning loss, and a whole variety of other initiatives, but that was really the big focus, as well as mental health services, and so we've actually done a good job, and we're in line to be prepared to close 2 of those grants out in September, so it crosses the fiscal year, and then we've got another fiscal year for the ARP grant.
So to Jeff's question, it's separate but included. Exactly. Because we have to make decisions around how we use the grant because they were positions for people. And if we want to keep those positions, that has a budget implication. Otherwise, it becomes separate. So we say we had funding for these positions for 2 years and they now go away. Or we had funding for these positions for 3 years, they now go away? Or are they so valuable right now that we need to find a place for them in our budget? Any other questions?
I know that the budget line item here is small in the grand scheme of things, but do we have any information from the state, what they're expecting from school districts as to how to use that money, what that's going to look like?
No, in fact, we have a briefing from the State Aid Planning Service, usually between, ASBO and NISCUS, the Superintendent's Association, and State Aid Planning. Usually one of those organizations will give us the information, and we haven't seen anything yet. We're hopeful that, some of the services that we have as part of the federal grants, we're hopeful that this line item will continue to help mitigate some of those impacts from COVID. So that would give districts a little more of a transition time. Because remember, federal grant funding, once the deadline comes, it's either account for it and show the spending, or it's gone. So that's the only guidance that I can give on it right now, is I think it's meant to bridge the gap in some of these areas of academic need. And as soon as we find out more, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Sean, Human Resources.
Thank you. Happy to be with you this evening and share information from the Human Resources Department. Our areas of responsibility, so you can see the broad areas that our office supports. So personnel processes and matters, staff hiring, onboarding and assignments, our sectioning process, contract negotiations, labor relations and contract administration, leadership development, and administrator and teacher evaluation processes. So I'd like to highlight tonight a few areas: budget, sectioning and staffing, coordination between human resources and other departments, hiring from the past year, and then where we stand as far as contract negotiations. Just from a budgetary standpoint, you'll see the top 5 expenses for our department. So salaries, second line, the orange slice there is teacher fellows. And if you're not familiar with the teacher fellows program, that's a collaboration between area colleges and universities, our district, and Monroe 2 BOCES. And what it allows us to do is bring in current college students as substitute teachers. So we do pay them. They're part of our staff, and they have a set schedule. It's per semester, so we have a fall semester and a spring semester where we have teacher fellows. And the nice part is we get some staffing support and help in terms of substitutes, and then it's also COSER aidable. So the money we spend, we get a large portion of that back. So it's a great way to spend money in supporting our buildings. Our BOCES contracted services, meeting expenses, and interview committees kind of round out the top 5. From a budget history standpoint, you'll notice just the 6 years of data here. Just wanted to highlight the increase from 2021 to this year, and that's mostly due to a clerical position that was historically funded from a printing and mail services account, and that was moved into the HR budget. So there's a decrease in one line item and an increase in the HR budget. And then also we've had some increases from BOCES services and the Teacher Immersion Fellows program because we're fully participating in that, but again, that's COSER aidable. So last year to this year, we're looking at about a 4.45% increase. I'd like to share a little bit of information about sectioning, and we'll start with elementary. So as you look at the data, what you'll see is the blue lines represent where we are this year. So we currently have 111 sections, kindergarten through 5th grade, in our 5 elementary buildings. And using the data that Jeff, Dr. Kimmer and his team supply us, we look at forecasting for next year. And we're looking at about, at this point, 116 sections, so that's an increase of about 5. So we're looking at Allen Creek increasing by 1 section, Jefferson Road increasing by 2 sections, Mendon Center increasing by 1 section, and Park Road increasing by 1 section if everything holds true. We hold our final sectioning meeting in July, so that's really where we look at the actual data, the actual enrollments, and then we base those on our planning numbers that are part of the teacher's contract, and then we look at our final sectioning at that point. Middle and high school this looks easy, but it's a little challenging. But the goal here, the overall theme that you need to understand is we're looking at staff neutral. Middle school staffing is fairly straightforward because of the team model that we utilize. And then high school staffing is driven by the programs of study and student selection process for graduation requirements and elective courses. And we spend a lot of time together. I meet with the secondary principals 4 times. We look at what students have selected. We go through each course to figure out which courses are going to run, those that we might need to not run for a year based on enrollment. And we go through that process and we tune that throughout the spring. So a lot goes into that. It's a very thoughtful, thorough process, but the secondary administrators really understand that the goal is to be staff neutral. From a coordination between human resources and other departments, we collaborate with our special education departments, business office, student services, allocating money through the CARES Act funds, increasing our social emotional learning support with mental health specialists and behavior specialists. We also worked very closely with the business office to make sure that we were able to comply with the healthcare worker bonus. There's a lot of information that we had to coordinate and work with, and making sure that those employees were identified, that the information was put into the portal, the monies are received, and then those funds will go to those employees on February 12th. As far as hiring, so this is kind of a snapshot of where we've been in the last year. So we hired an assistant superintendent for business, a Thornell Road principal, 2 assistant principals, one at Sutherland and one at Mendon High School, 37 certificated staff, 45 school-related professionals, and 43 support staff members. And we continue to work diligently on hiring and retaining a diverse workforce. We continue to bring forward candidates from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and once hired, we really work hard to tailor their mentoring to include inside and outside of district supports. And then globally, obviously hiring is something that we're always focused on, but in particular support staff. I'm sure we'll talk later on about the bus driver and monitor recruitment event that we had, but we're really focusing on increasing our bus driver workforce. Food services is an area of focus, custodians, school aides, which those are the people that support our children during recess and lunch times. And then, as the superintendent spoke, the focus on safety and security personnel. Then contract negotiations. So this is a busy year for us. We opened last year with a bus driver in attendance, and we were able to finalize that contract in the fall. We're currently open with our teachers and paraprofessionals, our office professionals, custodial maintenance and mechanics, and food services. So thankfully, we started some of those earlier, and we've made some really good progress. But it's one of our busier years for contract negotiations. And that's an overview. Any questions?
Any questions for Sean? So the only thing I would just clarify is that when we look at elementary sectioning, it's a mathematical equation. And so we take the contractual number for each class, divide it by the amount of students per grade level, and that gives you the amount of sections. And what a section means is it's a classroom that's housed with a teacher, and depending on the grade level, it could also contractually come with an additional paraprofessional. And so that elementary sectioning is significant in our budgeting process. And again, middle and high school, our goal is to keep that staff neutral every year. So there's some years where we can see elementary staffing go down, and other years where we see it come up. And that's both a matter of new families moving in, moving out, and 1 or 2 students can cause us to increase or decrease a section any given year. So it's a process that's ongoing, and like Sean said, isn't finalized really until July. And so we really have to look at Dr. Kimmer's projections as our guidepost.
Yep. They're very thoughtful. The other thing I would add is we have a buffer built in when we're doing our final sectioning meeting. to make sure that we're not going to go over our max numbers, because the last thing we would want to do is if, let's say, a family moved in the fall and now that increased our max numbers where we would have to normally break a section, we would never want to do that. So we build that buffer in during the summertime to allow for some expansion throughout the year.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So that will conclude our first budget work session. It's 6:50. Our next part of our agenda as we start our board meeting is going to be our Pittsford Pride. So with that, we have about 8 minutes. We'll open the doors and let the floodgates come in.
Welcome to the Pittsford Board of Education meeting. If you could, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
20.
Okay, if I could please get a motion for approval of the agenda. Thank you. Thank you. Any edits? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. With that, we move to one of my favorite nights of the year for Pittsford Pride. Mr. Pirro.
We had 4 people here for our budget workshop. And we have a room full of people to celebrate amazing students. I think that really speaks to so much of what we value in our community. So I'd like to welcome you all to our Pittsford Pride recognition. I want to emphasize my gratitude to our principals, our nominating staff members, our family that are here tonight, friends, special guests, everyone here to celebrate with us this evening. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our recipients this evening for being extraordinary. Want to thank you all for changing the lives of others in a real positive way. It's I'm trying to find the words for this, but when you go through a real downtime in life, it really takes some really superheroes to bring us back out of it. In our last couple years, we've gone through a real downtime with COVID. And so we have to look for brave people to get us out of that, to bring us together, and to help all of those that are around us. So the 9 students that we're recognizing tonight, I want to thank you for not only being outstanding citizens, but in my world, I want to thank you for being heroes for our district, because you've taken a real dark time and helped us get out of it. And we're getting closer to getting out of it every day because of students like you. So if we can give our 9 recipients an applause for that. This is also pretty cool. So we have 6,000 students in our district, roughly. And in the course of a school year, 27 students will be recognized for the Pittsford Pride Award. And so if I could just get someone to tell me what percentage of students that is without pulling out your calculator. Okay, it's a real small percentage. I'm sorry, Barb. Okay. So there are 99 2/3 students that will not receive this. So congratulations. Barb is a retired math teacher from Pittsford Sutherland. That's pretty funny. You're the only one that's ever answered that. Tonight's ceremony will be shared on our district website and also our YouTube channel. So just a real quick history of how this started. We wanted to highlight positive behavior, positive character. We hear in the news and the media too often the things that are not going well and the things that are people doing wrong. So we wanted to highlight the students that really are doing the right thing and bringing positivity and comfort and citizenship and changing the lives of people around them. So we started Pittsford Pride. We asked every building since its inception to seek out individuals that they felt exemplified citizenship, and we asked them to tell us why they felt that way. Then a building level is convened, and that building level selects one person per building. Beyond tonight's recognition, students will be recognized many different ways based on what building you're in. It can range from a bulletin board, morning announcements, your name on a plaque, working with your principal to decide on a special privilege, or a gift ranging from free time to a parking pass to spirit wear to being a class helper, to even being a speaker to other classes. Parents and guardians, if you read the small print attached to this award, if you are elementary and middle school parents or guardians, immediately following this, you're responsible for ice cream and dinner of their choice. High school, you are responsible for a vehicle. I'm sorry. So here is our process for tonight. As each student's name is called, we're going to ask that student to just stand. So we're going to do one student at a time. We're going to start with our board president, who will read the first three students. One will stand at a time. And then our vice president, Robin Scott, will do the next three, and I'll close us with the final three. Once all 9 recognitions have been read, students will collect their framed certificates over there, and then you'll walk behind the Board of Education members, and we will take a lot of pictures of you. And you're all welcome to come up and take pictures as well. So before we turn it over to our board president to read the first three, I would just ask that if you are a family member or a friend of one of those people that are recipients, take this all in. Sometimes we look for adults as role models. The role models really are the students that are here tonight, and I can't thank them enough for being who they are, and thank you for raising them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our board president, Ted Aresti.
Good evening, everyone. There are about 6 seats over here if anyone wants to come over and sit down. I feel bad everybody's standing. But more importantly, my first student, the first student of the evening that we're going to be recognizing is Carmen Esposito. Carmen Esposito, could you stand? Carmen is an 8th grader at Barker Road Middle School. He was nominated by Miss Osinski, Miss Knight, Miss Walsh, and Miss Locker. Carmen is a wonderful young man who exemplifies the qualities of good citizenship. He is always respectful to his teachers and shows that in a variety of ways. He comes to class prepared, he asks meaningful questions, and participates in class discussions. Carmen comes to class ready to work and is truly invested in learning. When a teacher makes a suggestion, he is open to it and utilizes it from that point forward. He is open to new learning and works to make connections to prior learning. It is fun to watch Carmen's expressions as he processes and then gets or understands the information. He is respectful to his peers and is willing to work with all students. When put into a group with people he is not close to friends with, Carmen is still open and fully participates in the group work. He respects the thoughts and opinions of other students and waits his turn to contribute to the group. Even when he has more knowledge than someone else, he seeks first to listen and understand the perspectives of someone without trying to control or dominate a discussion or conversation. This maturity is helpful when working with a group, and it's obvious that he is well respected for his thoughtfulness and kindness to others. Another trait that makes Carmen exceptional is his maturity in understanding that doing his best academically is number one priority at school. Even when others might be distracted or socializing, Carmen is able to understand that his time is important and he wants to make the most of it during school hours. Perhaps the most admirable trait that he exudes is his gentle kindness. We have observed this in both small and large ways. For example, he seems to intuitively understand that students react to grades in different ways. He has sympathized with students who have not been successful while never sharing his success that would only make them feel worse. We have also witnessed him sincerely being happy for another student doing well, even when his score was not. He was disappointed in his own self. Carmen is one of the first students to say hello to his teachers as he enters the classroom, and is typically one of the first students to say thank you, and addresses his teachers by name at the end of class to add, "Have a nice day." What a great kid. Congratulations, Carmen. Next, I'll be recognizing Christopher Johnson. Hi, Christopher. Christopher is a 10th grader at Sutherland, and he was nominated by Emily Natoli Burns. Christopher Johnson is truly a model student. Chris maintains high grades in all of his classes, but more importantly, is always willing to help others learn. He is kind and caring about his friends and community. Christopher chooses to put his energy towards becoming a better student, even when he struggles with his own difficulties. When he shows up in the classroom, he does so with a positive mindset and a desire to put his best energy in. Christopher is a positive role model and presence in both class and in Latin Club. His enthusiasm for learning is infectious. He both leads class discussions with confidence and is actively interested in others' opinions. Always respectful, always helpful, Christopher makes Sutherland shine. Chris is a member of Latin Club, Environmental Club, Reset Club, and Fishing Club. He has a passion for stewardship of the earth, especially marine life. He hopes to study marine biology in college, and while here at SHS, he is doing all he can to gain knowledge about science and the environment. Chris puts his energies into being an active member of the clubs he participates in. His club advisors report that he comes to meetings with ideas to benefit the entire group. He gives his time willingly to these causes. He commits the time needed to be a true member of his various clubs. Academically, Christopher is not afraid of hard work or a challenge. When he makes a decision to push himself in his classes, he sticks with it, even when it may be daunting. In taking on these personal challenges, Christopher has demonstrated that he does not just take the easy path to personal growth. He sets himself up by studying daily, meeting with teachers, and keeping his agreements. Christopher has a tremendous amount of empathy and practices using it when offering others assistance when they need it. In the classroom, Christopher can be seen offering support to others. Chris always chooses to do the right thing, in and out of the classroom. He leads by example and steps up when the moment requires it, and surrounds himself with others who do the same. Congratulations, Christopher. The final one I'll be recognizing this evening is Harleen Kaur. Hi, Harleen. Harleen is a 5th grader at Park Road Elementary, and she was nominated by Mr. Caparco, Ms. Pano, and Mr. Ford. We are so honored to nominate Harleen for the Pittsford Pride Citizenship Award. Harleen is a kind and enthusiastic learner who always gives 100%. During classroom discussions, she asks clarifying questions and is always actively engaged in the curriculum. She is always willing to lend a hand to her peers and teachers in the classroom whenever they need support. She takes an interest and tries her best in all areas. When a new student enters the classroom, she is a terrific ambassador to help that student acclimate and feel welcome at Park Road. She is welcoming and kind to all students. She is very sensitive to others' needs and responds accordingly. She truly wants to build people up and make other students shine. She does not want any praise or recognition for these acts, even though she is very deserving of this. Harleen has such a positive influence on our classroom and school atmosphere. In physical education, it doesn't matter what unit of instruction we are doing, she maintains a positive attitude and tries to get better. She is very accepting and welcoming when it comes to working with others in cooperative situations. She is a team player. Harleen is very friendly, caring, and is often seen smiling in the halls of Park Road. This definitely has a positive impact on the school community and sets a good example for all students, especially younger grade levels. Harleen serves as safety where she helps support younger students and serves as a role model within the building. She is always calm, helpful, and willing to help whenever it is asked of her. Harleen is a model student and is such a positive presence at Park Road. She is always striving to make the school a better place. She is truly one of a kind student who we are also grateful to be able to see flourish. Park Road is lucky to have a student like Harleen. We are so excited to see what the future holds for Harleen. We know it will be bright with her in it. Congratulations, Harleen. Next up is Robin Scott, our Vice President.
Good evening. I am so happy to announce our first honoree, Sora Kawaku O'Connor. Please stand, Sora. Sora is an 8th grader at Calkins Road Middle School, and she was nominated by the entire Purple team. That's comprised of Mr. Dermody, Mr. Burrett, Mrs. Fitzsimmons, Mrs. Christopher, Mrs. Madalino, and Mrs. Kilburn. The Purple team at CRMS proudly nominates Sora Kawaku O'Connor for Pittsford Pride. She's a great embodiment of everything wonderful in the Pittsford school community. She follows the Midnight Way on a daily basis, and our school is better for having her here. We can't think of a better candidate, an amazing young person who is confident, courageous, and kind to both her peers and teachers alike. Not only is Sora an excellent student and a positive influence on others, she is a hard worker too and engaged in the learning. Sora consistently shows nothing but respect for peers and adults alike. She is kind, caring, and has a wonderful sense of humor. Sora is a student who is 100% comfortable in her own skin and proud of her beliefs and stands by them in a positive way. Sora is well-rounded in school and community activities alike. She is active in the school play, athletics, socially, and always gives her all to make everything as great as possible. She has volunteered in the Learn to Row program for Pittsford Crew over the summer. Teachers, students, coaches, and community members all would agree that Sora is a mature, kind, and welcoming soul that makes those around her better. Some of Sora's teachers share the following, quote, "She is authentically kind towards all others," unquote. Quote, "Every day she says good morning and asks me how I am doing. She has a positive attitude and is the perfect embodiment of our CRMS values," unquote. Quote, "She is a tremendous young lady who glows with self-confidence, confidence, and compassion," unquote. Overall, Sora's impact on our school community is amazing. Her teachers and peers are all impacted by her in a meaningful way. She wants people to enjoy their time here and helps to make that happen. We are so proud to nominate Sora for the Pittsford Pride Award. Congratulations, Sora. Next, I would like to ask Jisoo Oh to stand. Jisoo is a 12th grader at Minden High School, and she's been nominated by Jude Dietz from the English department. I'm especially proud to nominate Jisoo Oh for Pittsford Pride. I say this with complete confidence. Jisoo Oh is one of the top students I've had in 27 years of teaching. Jisoo is a standout student and human, always doing her best, being her best, and making a difference in the lives of others. She assumes an encouraging leadership role as she works in groups and contributes to discussions. She's humble, inspiring, and a dedicated servant leader who models for her classmates how to be an advocate and ally. Her communication skills are stellar, from delivering inspiring speeches to writing interesting and passionate articles for the school newspaper to contributing to and serving as editor of the Minden High School Literary Magazine. Jisoo is a mature and invested advocate. Rather than merely complaining about what she sees flawed in our school community, she seeks out ways to improve it. This solutions-based attitude was especially evident twice last spring. First, troubled by the school shootings and in service of her peers who felt the need to process the events in a deliberate way, Jisoo proposed a reflection period. After introducing the idea to Ms. Julian, Jisoo, in a measured and passionate way, articulated the need for space and time for our school community to process. With support from Ms. Julian, Jisoo set in motion a dedicated plan through social media, posters, and announcements for the school community to come together voluntarily during lunch periods. She reached out to mental health staff to ensure their availability to attend in case the time brought up a need for more support. Jisoo saw a need and acted on behalf of others. The second example of advocacy and positive contributions to the entire school community is when Jisoo partnered with the president of our Black Student Union to propose a Cultural Heritage Day of celebration. They outlined the plan, pitched it to the administration, explained it to our ILT, and gained support from all. As a result, our school will have our first Cultural Heritage Day in February. Jisoo has planned this celebration from its inception to its soon-to-be reality. She has rallied others to execute this special and inclusive day, reaching out to all sorts of cultures to be represented. Students who identify as Jewish, Black, Korean, Haitian, Albanian, Lebanese, and more. Pittsford is lucky to take pride in having Jisoo part of our school community. Her warmth, sincerity, compassion, and respect for all shine. Jisoo is a model of what it means to do your best, be your best, and make a difference in the lives of others. Pittsford Minden is pleased to honor Jisoo as our Pittsford Pride recipient. Congratulations. And next, we will be honoring Logan Pritchett. Can you please stand? Hello, Logan. Logan is a fifth grader at Minden Center Elementary, and he was nominated by Mrs. Pink and Mrs. Mangelli. It is our pleasure to nominate Logan Pritchett, a fifth grader at Minden Center, for the Pittsford Pride Award. When Logan walks the halls at Minden Center, he greets everyone by name and always shares a smile and kind words. Logan is an inspiration to his grade level peers. His positive attitude is contagious, and he inspires those around him to be their best. During the school day, Logan is an extremely modest and hardworking student who thinks deeply about his learning. He participates in class discussions, responds meaningfully to the ideas of his classmates, and poses thought-provoking questions. In the classroom, his actions help to build a supportive learning environment for everyone. He is a mentor and friend to all students, works well with others, and is committed to the work he is assigned. Logan exudes optimism, and classmates are drawn to him as a result of his positivity. Logan always does the right thing and isn't concerned with the opinions of others. In social situations, he shows maturity and sincere empathy for others. For instance, during field days in fourth grade, Logan went out of his way to support classmates during a game of kickball. He recognized that not everyone shares an athletic prowess, but he empowered his classmates and made the game a memorable experience for everyone involved. The same can be said for physical education classes and recess. During PE, Logan will approach classmates who may struggle with a game or skill and share encouraging words such as, "You can do this," or "You've got this, keep your head up." He will even check back in with those students throughout PE class to see how they are doing and if they need any more help. What really makes Logan stand out is his authenticity and integrity. Throughout every day, across all settings, and during every year at Minden Center, Logan has proved himself to be an humble leader, a caring friend, a strong advocate, and a committed student. We are lucky to have Logan at MCE. Congratulations, Logan.
We should do this every day. It is so amazing just to hear good things about our students. When we did our budget guidelines, we talked about making sure that we preserve all the programs for all the different children we have in the community. Who knew we had a fishing team? And it's pretty good, isn't it, Christopher? Can you come up here for a second? How good is our fishing team?
I think it does pretty well.
Yeah. I have a T-shirt that says something about fishing champions, and I had to go to the club advisor and said, I didn't know we had a fishing team. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of on the down low.
Yeah.
It's not really talked about
Yeah.
too often.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. I heard the fishing team's amazing. It is my pleasure to introduce Mark Shand, grade 5, Thornell Road Elementary School. Mark was nominated by Mrs. Farrington, his social studies teacher. At Thornell Road Elementary School, we pursue excellence in learning and in character. We strive to be respectful, responsible, fair, trustworthy, and caring, even when no one is watching. Day to day, Mark Shand demonstrates these traits, and he goes above and beyond to show care and compassion to everyone. Because of this, he is most worthy of the Pittsford Pride Award. When you first meet Mark, you can tell in an instant that he is a ray of sunshine. Mark is a great friend, an avid builder, and active basketball player. He has a quiet confidence, he has a friendly demeanor, and he has a genuine interest in helping other people. This helpful nature is evident in the classroom, where he eagerly helps a partner with a tricky concept, cleans up dropped materials, and contributes helpful ideas to class discussions. Mark has also shown his benevolence during Thornell Road's Ugandan Water Project Wave Makers initiative. During the month of November, Thornell Road 5th graders took on the task to engage in a rigorous curriculum to learn more about the global water crisis. As part of the initiative, the students raised money to provide a school in Uganda with a rainwater collection tank. Since the first mention of the project, it was clear that Mark felt drawn to the cause. He dove deep into the curriculum, engaging in important conversations with his teachers and his peers, and was an active participant in identifying possible solutions to the global water crisis. Mark's dedication continued at home, where he educated his friends, families, and neighbors through informational flyers and personalized videos about the project and the lasting impact it can have on the Ugandan students. Mark raised $1,585.33. He was an outstanding example of how hard work paired with compassion and education can make a huge and lasting impact on the lives of others. Mark is the definition of a Thornell Road elementary star. I'm sure the impact of his kindness will only continue to grow. Congratulations, Mark. Next, it's my pleasure to recognize Jack Shannon. Jack, can you stand up in the back? Grade 4, Jeff Road Elementary. Jack was recognized by every single person at Jeff Road, I think. Joanna Farrell, Katie Phillips, Liz Heron, and Liz Candeas, and I think a bunch of them are here. So that's really cool, too. And while I'm at it, thank you all for staff and teachers and principals again that are here to celebrate with our students. So here we go, Jack. Jack Shannon is a 4th grade student at Jeff Road. who brings excitement for learning to the classroom and always enjoys sharing homeschool connections. Besides his excitement for school, Jack is a student who demonstrates outstanding character with many positive qualities. Jack always demonstrates honesty throughout his school day. Whether working with his peers or independently, Jack makes sure he is honest and always telling the truth. During the year, Jack was using a multiplication chart and asked his teachers if it was okay to use on the assignment. Jack did not want to cheat, so he made sure it was okay to use it. Jack is hardworking and perseveres during difficult concepts and tasks. When Jack encounters a challenge for himself at school, he never gives up and always keeps trying. For example, long division in 4th grade can be very difficult. Is that true? It is. Long division is not fun. Very difficult. However, Jack keeps practicing the skill and asks for help when needed. Jack will always thank the teacher for helping him. He is a student who wants to learn and improve his skills in all areas. Jack is a friendly and kind person to his peers and teachers. When Jack encounters someone in the hallway or even in the classroom, he will greet you with a good morning or a hello. Jack makes sure to check in and ask how people are doing and will always offer a helpful hug. He loves to make connections to adults and peers and shares personal stories. Jack makes others feel welcome. He is a great helper. He is always willing to lend a helping hand to his teachers and to his peers. Recently, he helped to put up a sensory pathway for younger students in the 1st grade and kindergarten hallways. Jack is respectful to his teachers. He's respectful to his peers. He participates in Best Buddies, which prompts respect and inclusion for students of all abilities. He is understanding and respectful of the fact that all students need different things in order to be successful. Jack is always thinking about others and their well-being. He cares deeply about others and how they are impacted by different situations. He is aware of others' feelings. He shows empathy and does all he can to help cheer people up. He also demonstrates empathy by advocating for his sibling. Overall, Jack is such a wonderful example of a student who demonstrates the true qualities of Pittsford pride. His teachers are so lucky to be able to work with a remarkable young man like him. Way to go, Jack. We are proud of you. So, Jack, I think that's more than an ice cream. I think you got to raise the stake a little bit with your family that's here. All right, our last, Eleanor Single, grade 4, Allen Creek Elementary School. Hi, Eleanor. Nominated by Ms. Hallett, Mr. Wakira, and Mr. Biondi, who are all here this evening that I see. Thank you for being here. It is our pleasure to nominate Eleanor Single for the Pittsford Pride Award. Eleanor is the ideal candidate for the Pittsford Pride, as she exemplifies many character traits necessary of such a prestigious award, including the 4 ACEs traits: being accepting, being cooperative, being empathetic, and always being supportive. While at school, Eleanor leads by example. She asks thought-provoking questions during the whole class instruction. She always works well in groups. She goes out of her way to make each day better for everyone around her. Some examples of this include entering the classroom daily with a smile, saying good morning as she walks past her peers, offering a hand when someone is having difficulty, being one of our student council representatives, and being an active member of our Best Buddies program. Eleanor is able to put herself in other classmates' shoes and anticipate their areas of difficulty. She is able to provide these students with support and encouragement in a non-judgmental way. One example of this occurred during her experience as a 4th grader this year. Eleanor noticed a classmate having a difficult time on a math assignment. She pulled her chair up next to him, walked him through various problems until he had a better understanding of the task, then switched roles, allowing him to walk her through problems to demonstrate understanding. That's exactly what a teacher does. This displays just one example of her empathy and her compassion for her fellow classmates and her dedication to making those around her feel successful on a daily basis. Eleanor also demonstrated these acts of kindness in 3rd grade. She often would help others throughout the day, offering an extra set of hands and solving difficult problems. Eleanor exemplifies the culture we work so hard to cultivate in Pittsford, demonstrating acts of kindness, leading with her heart, while expecting nothing in return. Kindness is contagious, and Eleanor's random acts inspire those around her. Eleanor, we thank you for being you. We are also proud of you. We're proud of your accomplishments, and we are honored to be able to nominate you for this award. Continue to be the role model that you are. Congratulations. So with that, I have to just say, wow. It's an honor to be a superintendent surrounded by so many amazing people. And want to thank all of our candidates again tonight for making our Pittsford schools better. So if we can, the 9 of you, there are 9 plaques and your letters on that back table. If you can grab your plaque and your letter and find a place behind the Board of Education, we're going to snap 5,000 pictures, and then we're going to give you a big cheer before you leave. Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
I don't see Ed.
We
I don't
do
see
need
Ed.
Fairport. Do you know where he is?
Melanie?
Hey, Melanie.
Hugging my student and taking pictures, so, good reason to be late. Hi, good
All right,
evening, everybody.
we're going to resume the Board of Education meeting and welcome Principal Mr. Foote to give his principal report.
All right, good evening. Sorry for the delay there. What a great event. Before I start, it is my first time with a presentation here, and I do want to thank everybody around this table specifically for hiring me. So I really appreciate that. It's been an amazing first half a year here, and I want to thank my staff and all of our families for just a wonderful start. You got to hear one piece, and Ms. Farrington's over there in the back. She did an excellent write-up. So I hope to highlight all those moments through the next hour and a half that I have with you all. I'm just going to focus our remarks. It's going to be brief tonight. I'm sure we'll get into more depth as the years go by, but I'm focusing our remarks around our mission statement. You heard a piece of that in the write-up, but TRE is focused on that teamwork, respect, and excellence for our students. I'm a big picture guy, so enjoy the show here. But I have never seen such a dedicated group of teachers, respectful parents dealing with the things that have come up, and the amount of partnerships. And so I hope to highlight that briefly tonight. So in terms of teamwork, I've seen this everywhere I've gone, every corner of this building. I guess it's new, but TRE has a lot of new staff members. I'm used to that, but that's a new thing for the building. We have new to us people who are doing phenomenal, and we have brand new teachers, like off of a student teaching placement, new, which is a little bit new, and they're doing phenomenal. The amount of support that our grade level chairs and our other colleagues who have been here has been so great to just embrace them and just show them the Thornhill Road way. We are so excited at Thornhill to have not new things, just things back. That's been a big message from our parents, from our staff. So a lot of what I'm showing you might not be new, but it is so solid, and we are so excited to be doing these things again all together. Our safety patrol is alive and well. They're in our hallways. One of our members here is a safety patrol member, so helping us out all over the place. Best Buddies, what a phenomenal program. As a former special education 12-on-1 teacher, when I heard that program was thriving here, and we have over 50 members, and two basically first-year teachers stepped up to get that off the ground for us. And so just to see that involvement and the inclusivity once a month at our school has been just incredible to see that focus. Diving in a little bit, I haven't gotten too much as a new principal. The teachers are teaching me more than anything, right? They've been very patient with as I come along. I have been able to start to dip into the deep curriculum initiatives and the work, and I couldn't be more impressed with the level of conversation. Melanie Ward said that last week, and I couldn't agree more in meetings. And the amount of work into standards, upcoming, not even right now, future planning, partnerships with coaching models, and just the various things that the district offers, and how many of our Thornhill Road staff take advantage of that. So it's been very impressive, and the work directly goes to kids. So that's why I'm highlighting a lot of staff, but you can see them and that teamwork and that partnership. You can look at that picture and see that those brains are firing, right? They're diving deep, and it's been really, really cool to see. Our partnerships have been one of the strongest partnerships I've seen it as an elementary school. Our PTSA is alive and thriving. They put on a fall fest to kick us off, and we had hundreds of people and mostly new families join us, and that was just the best way to welcome them to our school community. I got so many positive comments about that night, just right off the back of the school. Really casual, and it was just, for me, it was wonderful because I got to meet so many people, and the connections that were made instantly, especially for our new families, was phenomenal. They put on a Winterfest night just last Friday. Thankful that it wasn't closed due to the weather. We had a couple hundred people and all around the school inside doing the same thing, and I got so many nice emails and calls. And that's thanks to Colleen Emmons, our PTSA president, Lance Rieger, our co-chair, and all the members of our PTSA. They've just been phenomenal so far, and I've been really appreciative of that parent support. We do dictionaries, I learned, and so I learned this at the Fairport graduation, sitting next to Harold McAuliffe. Out of all of Blue Cross Arena, he's sitting next to me. Hey, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm an educator. What do you do? Oh, where do you work? Pittsford. Oh, we coordinate the dictionary program, small world. So I got to meet Harold, and we ended up giving out dictionaries thanks to Rotary. And our IDP, our developmental program, was integral in their vocational work to get us organized. They sorted all of those dictionaries that were delivered to all the elementary schools over a period of a couple weeks. So just a phenomenal vocational connection. Megan Hurley, one of our speech and language providers, coordinates that, and that was just fantastic partnership there. Respect, it's a big thing. We talk about it a lot every single day, little ones, and I'm seeing that demonstrated everywhere in a variety of ways. The amount of respect we show our veterans is a cornerstone of Thornell. The American Legion, I was able to visit and have breakfast there in the summer and get to know, and then they've showed up for our events, and we're able to send our students there now again. Our local historian visit, and just the amount of respect that we show our local town is incredibly impressive. And so I've been really, really pleased with those partnerships, curricular-based, but also just it's important to know where you come from. And that's been amazing. We've expanded that, right, to our Israeli partnership. What a powerful week that we had at our school, and I know district-wide. It's just incredible to see the global impact, and I'll talk about the next project that you heard a little bit about. But this was really wonderful. We have the Shinshinim come, a couple times a week, but to see the whole delegation come into our school, I got to spend another awesome connection is that our sister school, Seif School in Modin, she's a first-year principal of that school. And so I'm the first-year principal at Thornell, and we Zoomed over the summer, and she was on the visit, and we spent a couple days together. And just to hear the connections, so deep, cultural connections. Just running buildings and school systems connections. It was phenomenal. So, and then back to that respect, that logo there is our Thornell crest with the Seif logo combination, and our custodian Tom is into graphic design, did all the stars around Thornell, and he designed that, and we gave that to them as a gift, as a symbol of our partnership. So just respecting all staff in our building, and then respecting cultures. You heard a little bit about the Ugandan Water Project. That was incredible. That's our 5th grade class after their water walk, and the connections they made through curriculum, exploration. So on the left, they studied the filters and the water filtration systems that is used as part of the project. The left picture is teams of students building their own filters and playing around with it, what would work best to try to understand it. And the right picture is them writing about it. So just the interdisciplinary aspect of something like that, let alone the respect and global connection. Incredible. All right, excellent. So I love coming and bragging about our school. I'll come again if you invite me. I'll be happy to do this once a year. Is that the schedule? But anytime, I could spend hours talking about our school so far, and I've just touched the surface. We celebrate kids. I hope you hear through my presentation just celebrations of students, staffs, families as I go. We started with this picture. This was our very first assembly of the school in a couple years, and it was honoring our readers. The focus was on our readers, thanks to our library team and our reading team. 179,000 minutes read, incredible, and you can see how many kids K-5 participate in that. We wrote a book last year. I can't take credit for it. That's the biggest disappointment, is that I can't take credit for any of this. But it won first place in our New York State archives. And those students, this is actually what I wanted to highlight. Not because they're my direct supervisors and in charge of my career, but more that I was amazed, blown away, to be honest, that you have superintendent, board president, board members, town, one class. That all those people came to honor one classroom at our school. That's incredible. So really wanted to highlight that, and thanks to Tony Stevens-Oliver on the right-hand side for coordinating that project last year, too. All right, you already got our Pittsford Pride winners. So Charlie, we just added Mark to the roster, took the picture. That's why I was late, but just honoring kids and their excellence. I'm blown away by everybody that's been spoken about the last 2 times. We just incredible work. And you know what? I said I'd be brief, and that's brief, I hope. I hope I hit the mark. But just a wonderful school community. So happy to be a part of it. Very thankful to the district team in front of us, our board. I hope you enjoyed your visit. I found it to be like I do every day, just warm, friendly, informal, and I think that's what makes Thornhill Road the best, because we are the best. So it's the best school. Sorry, so thank you. Any questions or anything I can
You could have stopped
do?
about 30 seconds.
No. I'm also competitive, so, yeah, there you go.
Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions or anything?
On behalf of the board, I just want to thank you we had a great visit
Good.
and tour of the building, and we really appreciate how your community at the school has come together, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ep.
Thank you, Cassie. Yep.
Okay, can I get an approval of the meeting from January 10th minutes? Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Renee. Any edits? And a motion for approval? All in favor? Any against? That motion carries. And can I also get a motion for the special meeting on January 17th? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Robin. Any edits? All those in favor? Any against? That motion carries as well. Moving on to Board of Education reports. The dates are there for your viewing, and I'd just like to myself comment. This past weekend, the whole board attended the legislative breakfast. Many of the legislators from around the county, and in fact, even Congressman Joe Morelli was there. And the thing I'd like to point out is our very own Sarah Peluzio, who co-chairs the Monroe County School Board's legislative committee, put that event together. And it goes to show, people often ask, what do you do on the school board? We do a lot within the school, but we're also very involved countywide. And, hats off to Sarah and all the effort she put into a very successful countywide event. So thank you, Sarah. Under dates to remember, I just want to add to the list that's not on there. We have a school visit at Mendon this Thursday. Click down to that. It's 7 o'clock visit with 7:30 tour. So I see a hands. Who's going to be there? Great. Everyone will be there. Perfect. Also, from 2:20 to 2:24, I'm sure everybody will be happy to hear that's President's Week recess. And on 2:28 will be our next regularly scheduled meeting. With that, we will move on to the financial report. Mr. Vespi.
For your consideration tonight is the acceptance of the December Treasurers Report. Notable items I previously mentioned. We continue to excel in interest earnings because of rising interest rates, in county sales tax. The excellent summary provided by Holly Evans and Leanne Reister, who put these reports together. We continue to receive some state aid in terms of excess cost and lottery grant aid. And again, our food service program continues to stay on target in terms of participation. So that's very positive news.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion on the treasurer's report? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dave. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, next for your consideration is the extra classroom activities report, and nothing of significance to report at this time.
Okay, can I have a motion on the extra classroom report?
Second.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Emily. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, next for your consideration is the acceptance of the non-resident tuition rates. These rates are set after we get information in regarding the state aid forms, and the factors go into the rates, and they're set on an annual basis.
Can I get a motion on the non-resident tuition rates, please? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Emily. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, again, next for your consideration, this kind of goes for items 4 and 5, although we do need to vote on each of those items separately. But this goes back to the state's requirement to have a more specific date with regard to taking action on a corrective action plan. So we've already done one of these previously. These are 2 additional revisions where we'll submit the report in the portal. It takes a little bit of time to get audited, and then it kicks back to us to say, we want a specific date for the corrective action, and then that needs to go back to the Board of Education for approval. So these are items that you've already reviewed, they've been audited, they've been reported to you. This is more of a procedural item, and we hope to avoid these in the future by just overdoing it in terms of specific dates with these types of reports.
Okay, can I get a motion on the revised internal audit corrective action plan? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Renee. Any questions? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That carries. And we'll also do the same for the revised extra classroom audit corrective action plan. All those in favor? All those, motion, yes, need a motion. Dave, Sarah, thank you. That'd be the second. And any questions? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Okay, next, we have a really unique situation. I think I previously mentioned on a tour that I've only been involved with an emergency declaration for a project twice in my career. So this has to do with the fact that we had roof damage in the windstorm, just prior to the December break. Not only are we submitting the damage caused by the wind to our insurance company, but it also has been recommended by our architects to declare an emergency project. I think there's 2 aspects that I'd like to highlight tonight. One is the procedural aspects with doing that, right? You have to do it, you have to have a seeker. It's not as formal, right? So you have to declare yourself as lead agency. Obviously, there's not an impact in terms of doing a roofing repair. And then secondly, you have to pass a resolution actually declaring the emergency project. And there's a number of items, including the age of the roof, the actual damage, photos, a total budget estimate, which in this case is about $575,000, and a number of other requirements that we'll work through with the architect and the state education department. This does 2 things. One is after we satisfy the insurance requirement, and there's a determination made in terms of dollars that will recoup, from that avenue, it then paves the way for us to get state aid back, building aid back from that damage. So this is really, from a fiscal standpoint, this is really something that, to be fiscally responsible, we really need to do. So we'll pay for the repairs and then submit a final cost report and then recoup some of the cost associated with the repairs. So that's the process. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is this highlights the need to have a long-range plan in terms of capital project planning. This is an 18-year roof. This would have been a number 4 on our priority and would have been moved up to a 5. So that's why these capital project, even the capital project that we're proposing that has a number of infrastructure work, it's so important to, to package the work, to get it out there, to notify the community, and to do these projects on a regular basis to keep up with this maintenance. And again, while this was something that we couldn't have, predicted, this would have been probably, like I said, a 4 and scheduled for the next capital project, because even though it made it 18 years, you might get 22 years. It's the planning part of it that's really important. And this, I think, really highlights the need for us to continue to look at our facilities, evaluate the $300 million that we've identified in the building condition survey, and really plan this work on a regular basis.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the seeker for emergency project? In a second. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to be doing a roll call vote for this, and so I'll call your name, and then I need a yes or a no. Myself, yes. Robin Scott?
Yes.
David Burke?
Yes.
Jeff Casey?
Yes.
Emily Kay?
Yes.
Sarah Peluzio?
Yes.
And Renee Sanchez-Kazakis?
Yes.
The motion carries. And the second part of it is the motion to approve the emergency project resolution. May I have a motion? Thanks, Emily. And a second? Thanks, Renee. I'm again going to do a roll call vote. Myself is a yes. Robin Scott?
Yes.
David Burke?
Yes.
Jeff Casey.
Yes.
Emily Kay.
Yes.
Sarah Peluzio.
Yes.
Renee Sanchez-Kazakis.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Can I just ask a question about that? So, Mike, are we going to have to close the auditorium during the roof repair, do you know?
I don't anticipate that we will at this time. The biggest concern that we had was with the roof drains, and now that those are secure, we'll also look at the scheduling of when we do those repairs. So I don't anticipate, that that's going to be an issue at this time.
Thank you.
You all set? Perfect. Next, we'll invite up Mr. Clark for the Human Resource Report.
Thank you. Good evening. First, for your consideration, we have the professional staff report. You'll see 1 certificated staff appointment, 3 SRP appointments, 1 supervisory technical appointment, 1 teacher fellow appointment, 1 administrator resignation, 2 administrator resignations for retirement. We have 19 certificated staff resignations for retirement with 456.8 years of combined service, and 1 supervisory technical resignation for retirement with 20.4 years of service.
Wow. May I please have a motion on the professional staff report? Thank you, Emily. And a second? Thanks, Jeff. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the support staff report. We have 3 clerical appointments, 1 transportation appointment, and 2 food service worker appointments.
May I have a motion on the support staff report? Thank you, Sarah.
Second.
Thank you, Renee. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, for your consideration is a new position for personnel clerk. You'll see the justification document in the board packet. This is not an additional FTE. It's a restructure to better align with the position duties.
May I have a motion on the personnel clerk? Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Robin. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. And finally, for your consideration, you'll see a first reading for tenure.
Thank you. Ms. Woods, for the special education report, please.
Good evening. We have recommendations from the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education on the consent agenda.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Pirro and the superintendent's report.
Thank you. There is not a need for an executive session this evening. Just a couple things of note. Prior to the board meeting, we had several students from robotics that wanted to follow up and talk to the board about including robotics into the budget this year. They did not sign up for public comment, and so after talking with the group, they thought it would be even better if they came back right before their next robotics event and bring the robot in here to give a little presentation about robotics and then ask you for support in the budget. So they were great. I also received a handout that I shared with them that I would pass along to the Board of Education. Clever. This weekend, we've had a bus driver shortage for a while now, and recently we have been on the mend. We have been canceling a lot less buses. Many mornings now I see no cancellations. Many afternoons I see no cancellations. You may have heard us advertise on the radio. I want to thank our communications department for that. Our HR communications, our data team, our assistant superintendent for business have really worked hard on campaigning for more bus drivers. This Saturday, if you recall, it was probably about -20, and we had 18 people signed up, and we didn't think there was a chance anyone would show, and almost everyone showed. For the recruitment, we had people file an application right there on the spot. So I'm hopeful that our fleet is growing and that we can continue to make our transportation department full or whole. The other people I would just like to recognize are our bus drivers and other mechanics that attended that day, and were able to show prospective candidates or applicants what it's like to be a bus driver in Pittsford. And the feeling was, well, it was freezing, but the other feeling was really kind of warm and fuzzy, where they had an opportunity to really get a sense of how closely knit that transportation department is. So thank you, everyone, for all of your work that's been ongoing to secure bus drivers. The last thing I have is related to pools and athletic reserves. As Mike alluded to, we have $300 million of needs for the district that obviously you can't ask the community to pass $300 million. What we've been doing is saving, paying off our debt, and taking about a quarter or a little bit more of the $300 million, bringing it to the public for vote, knowing that that $69 million will come off of that $300 million, and it will not increase our capital levy. So that's just really solid financial planning. Having said that, we also have to have an eye to the future. We do know within the remaining amount of needs is a pool. And our estimate for a pool prior to financing is about $30 million. And that is for an 8-lane pool, no bells and whistles. After financing, we're probably looking at closer to $55 million. So it's expensive. So we need to have a plan for that. So there's a couple different ways we can go regarding this. One is to set up a pool reserve, which means that every year as we put money into different reserves, so we have been funding our buses through reserves. So we put money into our bus reserve every year. We would allocate an up to amount for a pools and or athletics reserve. And the amount of up to that I would request would be $40 million. There's two trains of thought around this. One is we know that we're going to need a pool. On Friday we had an engineer again inspect the pool, and I do have the report in my inbox. I think I just sent it to you, and I have not read the whole thing. But I did read the last part, which says that the shell and the integrity of the pool is good for a minimum of 10 more years. So moving forward, we have time to put money aside and to collaborate with our pool stakeholders on everything from timing to location to quantity. And so there's a huge benefit to having a pool reserve. The benefit of adding athletics to that reserve is simply that it would also open up the money to allow us to use it for other needs that we may not be, that are not forecasted at this time for athletics. Given that our pools need to be a priority moving forward, my recommendation at this time would be to bring you back the language from our attorney around establishment of a reserve, and then ask for you to vote on that. And my recommendation would actually be to limit it to a pool. So I'd like to open that up for discussion at this point.
And just to clarify, Mike, even after we vote on it, then the vote will go to the public in May to approve the creation of the capital reserve?
Correct. So we would vote. The Board of Education has the authority to establish the reserve. Once the board approves to establish it, then the language of the reserve would go to the voters in May. As you vote on the school budget this year, you'll vote on a bus reserve, allowing us to continue to take money out and buy different buses, electric buses, etc. And similarly, you would be allowing us to establish, if the voters voted yes, to establish this reserve. And then we would fund that annually.
Anybody have other comments?
Are there any concerns from the board of earmarking the reserve strictly for a pool versus pool and athletics?
I guess the question is ultimately in how it's written, but it sounds like if we establish it for the pool that way, then we would only be able to use the funds in the future for that. We would have mandated ourselves and tied our hands from using it for any other purposes. Is that right?
It is, but we also have to recognize that we still have a capital reserve account that we can draw money from as well.
I think the only comment that I'd like to make is just in working with the board and through different meetings that Mr. Pirro and myself have had with different stakeholders, the pools within our district represent the community, and with us being down to 2 pools now and one that we know has kind of a timeline on it, it's important that we do plan for our future. And if and the board has agreed that we want to remain a 2-pool district, we have to plan for that future. So I think that setting up a reserve is the right step toward that future. So I fully support it.
Any other questions or comments? So between now and our next meeting, we will get language to bring to the Board of Education that you'll have a chance to review. And we will bring pool reserve to the community for vote in May. Thank you, everyone. That's all I have, Ted.
Thank you. With that, can I get a motion on the consent agenda? Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Anybody have any old business? Anybody have any new business? Okay. That brings us to public comment, and we did have some submissions. Just real quick before I go to those, just want to remind everybody that our board values transparency, that this is a business meeting and not a public forum. We just ask that the comments be respectful and remain constructive, and that reminder that we have students here in the room and also possibly watching on TV, so that you keep that in mind and you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. That's the condensed version. With that, I will call up the first submission, and that is Sherry Downey. And if you would, for the record, just state your address when you come up. Thank you. If you could come up to this microphone, sorry about that.
Hello, Mr. Pirro. Hello, Mrs. Ward. When would you like me to start? When do I know that the time has started? Right there? All right. Matt and I hardly said a word to each other until we arrived at my apartment. We were filled with so much emotion that there was nothing but complete recklessness left to us. I expect all under age 18 leave now. Our clothes were wet from the rain, and I got 2 thin towels from the bathroom. I handed one to Matt, but instead of drying himself, he took it and wiped it gently over my face. I stood there motionless while he lifted my hair and just dried the base of my neck with a towel. He unzipped my jacket and pushed it off my shoulders. It fell to the floor. His lips were all I could look at, and I abruptly disengaged myself and started walking towards the kitchen. I better find another towel, I said, knowing we didn't have any other towels. But he caught me by the sleeve, and his hands were pulling me back. I closed my eyes. I felt his arms go around me, and before I knew it, his hands were under my shirt, stroking and tantalizing. He kissed me, and I stopped breathing. He was filled with need. He seemed unable to control himself. Please, I whispered, wait. He already had my shirt off. We fell back on the pile of stuffed animal blankets. He pinned me in the mattress. His weight was delicious, and now he was moving his lips against mine, agonizing and luscious. The brush of stubble against my temples, the sweep of his hair. I felt I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was his, and he was mine. I could feel the heat of him burning through his wet clothes. He was a man possessed by grief and passion together. Finally, I made myself very clearly say, we have to use a condom. With some embarrassment, he regained control of himself. He took a deep, shuddering breath and said, I have a couple in my wallet. Let's use 2, just to be sure, I said. Okay, he said. But once he started to kiss me again, the taste and smell of him overwhelmed me, and I became frantic to get his clothes off, too. I felt hypnotized as if I were in a dream, and I kept thinking, this is Matt. He is mine now, mine at last.
Okay, I think we get the point. Can you get to
Yes, I can move
your
on to the next
statement?
one. That's fine. Next book, How Sex Apps Work. Step 1. You upload a tiny picture of yourself. What?
What was the first book?
It's on record. It is Girl in Translation, and it is mandatory reading for 10th grade honors. Step 1, how sex apps work. Different book. Upload a tiny picture of yourself to the app. The app works out your location. Step 2. Step 3, the app tells you who the nearest homosexuals are. Doesn't matter. Don't focus on that. We don't provide that information to any student. Number 4, you can chat to them. 5, because they are near, it is easy to meet up with them. Page 160, if you are that horny and you want to do a sex meet the trick in public place for a drink first. Number 173, page 173, doing the sex. A good handy is all about the wrist action. Rub the head of his COCK back and forth with your hand. Blowies. Oral sex, it's popping another dude's peen into your mouth.
Can you move on to the next one,
Yes, I
please?
can. Milk and honey. He guts her with his fingers like he scraped the inside of a cantaloupe clean. I will smile, throw my head back, arch my body like a mountain, and you will split in half. Baby, lick me, like your mouth was the gift of reading.
Can you summarize, please, or be done?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Fluently, vividly, don't you dare leave a single word untouched. I swear my ending will be so good, the last few words will come running into your mouth. And when you're done, take a seat, because it's
And
my
you-
turn
you
to
can
make
finish
music
now.
with my knees pressed to the ground. This is in the Citizen's Guide to the U.S. Federal Law and Obscenity, Section 1466A in the Title 18 United States Code makes it illegal for any person to knowingly produce, distribute, receive, or possess intent to transfer or distribute visual representations such as drawing, cartoons, or paintings that appear to depict minors engaging in sexually explicit content and are deemed obscene, what is considered obscene can be determined by referring to the United States Department of Justice. These are all the books in multiple of your schools, and the kids get credit for reading them by the 20 in 4 program that you guys provide. I ask you, what are you going to do about this? Answer. Speak for yourselves. We trusted you. Filing form is not enough.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here now.
But if I could just quickly for anyone watching or in the audience, we do have a process too. So concerns don't fall on deaf ears. I need that to be on the record. Is that we do have a formal process. If anyone, every family has values and they're respected. They need to be respected. And if there is literature that you feel should not be in the hands of our students, there is a process to have a complete review of that book.
I've gone through that, thank you.
So,
Brought it to the attention of multiple people for multiple years.
okay. Oh, well, thank you. I can tell you I've not had a process go through this year. Thank you, though.
Okay, next up is Laura Wolitsky. Sorry about that. Again, if you would state your address for the record.
Laura Wolitsky, 17 Bromley Road, Pittsford. I am Laura Wolitsky Caruso. I am the president of Mendon Fame, the parent-run music booster club. We would like to recommend that the Pittsford Central School District include a new permanent restricted line item to the annual budget totaling a minimum of $2,500 up to $5,000. Each year, music students from Mendon and Sutherland have been invited to participate in NYSSMA's Area All-State Festival. This is a huge honor and something the district should be very proud of. It means our students are considered the best of our area's high school musicians. What you may not know is that parents are required to pay approximately $550 out of their own pockets for their children to participate. This covers accommodations, meals, workshops, and ensemble practices, culminating in an amazing concert at the Eastman Theater. Last year, Mendon Fame polled 19 school districts and learned that Pittsford is the only district that does not cover any of the cost. Most schools pay the full amount, a few pay 50%. For the past couple of years, Mendon Fame has provided $220 scholarships to the Mendon students selected for this honor, $110 for the registration fee, plus $100 towards the additional expenses. The number of Pittsford Central School District students invited to Area All-State each year varies. The minimum request of $2,500 would cover $250 per student, approximately 50% for up to 10 students. If there are less than 10, the district would save some money. If there are more than 10, the $2,500 could be divided evenly amongst them. If the district covered this amount, Mendon Fame could potentially continue to cover the registration fee for Mendon students, and the families would be responsible for the balance. The higher amount, $5,000, would cover a majority of the fee for 10 students. This request would cover students at both Mendon and Sutherland. We hope the Pittsford Central School District can recognize the accomplishment of these students by helping them with this financial aid. I do want to include that this is not a request for funding for Mendon Fame. We're self-sufficient. This is a request to recognize and support some very talented Mendon and Sutherland students. I also want to say that this past Saturday, Mendon Fame presented the return of our cabaret fundraiser. The Mendon Commons was transformed to a night of peace, love, and music. 6 extracurricular groups, 3 vocal, 2 jazz, and a strings ensemble performed. Brett Davidson, a Mendon alum and from Channel 10, hosted, and approximately 250 parents and students attended. It was a great success, and we are incredibly appreciative of everyone within the district who added to the fabulous evening. And I do have a list of the different schools. I brought 8 of them, if I can pass them out.
If I could. So this question comes up annually, not from you, but the request for funds for different competitions for different clubs and activities. And so I think that maybe it's time, and I'm not sure if it's Sean or Melanie who is the best, maybe it's through SLT, that we try to gather the total cost, because now we've had robotics ask for funding, music, and we just had a request from DECA for several, a high amount of money. So maybe if we can put together that list, and we could take a look at, where it could possibly fall in the budget and bring that to the Board of Education. Thank you. We won't even make you come in and perform like robotics. You can just, okay, well that, you might have to. So I think that could be helpful instead of kind of piecemealing all of these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Meredith Graham. Again, if you just state your address when you get up. Thank you, Meredith.
Good evening, Meredith Graham, 21 Northfield Gate. I'm here to talk to you tonight about air quality at Barker Road Middle School. It's important. It affects illness spread, absenteeism, both students and teachers, and reducing CO2 levels increases performance significantly. Your capital improvement project includes renovations that will take years. However, I think getting air quality improved at Barker Road over the next summer is essential. Adding both air conditioning and air vent modifications will increase student performance. Additionally, after viewing the data from the district on CO2 readings at various locations in Barker Road, air quality improvements are essential. The incoming air vents are actually on shelves in the classrooms, which means that students can come in and put their stuff right on top of the vent where the air flows into the room. Please consider a simple addition to all the air input vents to redirect the air, similar to what you might do in your home to change the airflow 90 degrees. It would be low cost, and the shelves could then be used without risk to blocking the airflow. Adding air conditioning is important because bringing all our middle school students to a position of reasonable comfort in the warmer months ensures students will perform at a higher level. Additionally, the current plan creates a worse situation for learning languages. The portable classrooms currently do have air conditioning and carpets, which reduces noise levels and helps with understanding pronunciation. After the renovations, students will learn languages without either. Students who attend Calkins Road say that the classrooms are comfortable and not hot in the warm months. I recognize there isn't air conditioning as one might describe it at Calkins, but due to the system that's there, it does feel cool. And I wanted to just say that Barker Road students are sweating and barely able to manage during the warm months. And by taking away those few air-conditioned classrooms, you are taking away a small but appreciated oasis in the day for all students. All students are required to take a language. The district should provide air quality improvements to all the classrooms, including air conditioning and air vent modifications, as well as increasing airflow in classrooms with the worst levels of CO2. I believe those are the 6th grade classrooms. The district should be aiming for 6 air changes per hour, a combination of filtered air and fresh air, because readings the district did show CO2 levels above 1,400 in a few cases. Importantly, please ask the students of Barker Road to tell you their opinions. Ask them if they want air conditioning and better air quality. Getting feedback from students is typically done at Pittsford, and this capital project should be no exception. Thank you.
Just tomorrow night, we have a forum on the capital project. The format's going to be a little bit different. Our last forum was about, we went over on our presentation. So we presented for about 45 minutes, and then there was about 35, 40 minutes of questions around the pools. So it was really became about what's not in the project instead of what's in the project. So to change the format, tomorrow night, we'll present for about 15 minutes, and then we will break up into tables with different experts at each table. So one of the tables will be the construction managers, will be the architects, will be the principals, it will be the finance, etc. So Meredith, I think what would be really important too for you is to ask those direct questions to the architects, construction managers, bring those readings. I know that there were, the person that does our HVAC has a student in the district. He's been amazing. He has a very good reason to make sure our air quality is the best it can be, and there was a lot of mitigation that also took place. But I think that your feedback's important, and I think your questions need to be answered. So I think tomorrow night, if you're going to be there, you'll have ample opportunity to go up to a table and directly talk about air quality as well. And so, I think lastly around this project, so we have the $69 million tag without increasing the capital levy at all. It's relatively conceptual, where we can't make major changes, but we can make different types of changes. So everyone's voice is important. I'm not going to ask students. It's like asking students if you like candy, or some of them. They're going to want they're going to want air conditioning. Sutherland High School needs air conditioning. Mendon High School needs air conditioning. Et cetera, et cetera. One of our realities, and I think I've shared this with you before, is that our budget has more than doubled as it relates to utilities this year alone. So we will do our best to consider your thoughts and certainly air quality. Thanks. And thanks for coming again.
Okay. If I could get a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks, Emily. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Our next meeting is February 28th, with a work session at 6 and a regular meeting at 7. Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.